Yeah, so as you rightly say, councillors of state are basically the members of the royal family that will act for the Queen if she's incapacitated. And I think it's easy for people to think, oh, this is a bit arm's length, it's a bit archaic. But actually, as the Queen gets older and inevitably suffers more ill health, I think this is an issue that's going to become increasingly relevant or irrelevant. And there's a new House of Commons library report that's come out, and they're not making recommendations; they're just setting down for MPs the practicalities of the situation, what's what. And it seems from this report to be very clear that of those four councils of state that exist at the moment, which is the Prince of Wales, Duke of Cambridge, Duke of Sussex and the Duke of York, the Duke of Sussex really isn't eligible to be one because he hasn't been a resident in the UK for kind of 2.5 years now. But it does seem like there is nothing that would disbar Andrew, even though he has stepped down as a royal family, a member of the royal family. He's utterly disgraced and not even allowed to use his HRH. But because he is in the line of succession, he would still be able to stand in for his mother if she ever wasn't able to conduct her duties to her full extent. So it's a really interesting topic, I think.
It's interesting, and I think likely to be very upsetting for a lot of people, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the thought of Prince Andrew, given what's gone on in the last couple of years, being able to appoint ministers, affix the royal seal to official documents, will fill a lot of people with horror. And I think others will feel that, you know, by his actions and the way he's quit royal duties and moved halfway across the world, Harry shouldn't be entitled to do it either. What I think is interesting is that the Queen could make this clear this up very easily if she wanted to by issuing it what's known as a letters patent. And I'm sure you'll speak to Robert about this because he's even more of an expert on it than I am. But it's basically a letter of the Queen's will saying, as your Queen, this is what I want to happen. So she could issue a letters patent and just say, Harry and Andrew are out of the running and I'm going to appoint Anne and Edward in their place. Anne and Edward used to be councillors of state before William and Harry came of age. So there's no reason why she couldn't do it.
Speaking of Harry, there was a story on the weekend that suggested that Harry is renewing the lease at Frogmore Cottage, which would allow him to stay on in the role in some sort of technicality. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think to the paper who published this report, the story about Harry renewing the lease on Frogmore is true. He says that it will be their home, you know, moving forwards, despite everything that's going on with the High Court at the moment. And that's the case. I just think there was probably a bit of too much topspin put on the story and trying to equate it with the whole Council of State issue. It would be Buckingham Palace keep on saying to me there's no change at the moment, there are no plans to move legally on this. I contacted Harry's representatives, as I always do when I'm running a story about him, to see what they wanted to say, and as usual I hear nothing back. But I think it's something that I think it's something that needs to be dealt with sooner rather than later, and it's quite intriguing that no one seems to be in a hurry to do it.
You also suggest in your story today that some are concerned about how the Sussexes might react if he was removed, and you know they don't take much on the chin, do they?
Well, exactly. And, you know, I would stress that no one who's involved in the decision-making process has suggested this to me, but people I know who know about the royal household and the way it works have wondered quite loudly whether it could be that the Queen just doesn't want to antagonise her grandson. You know, as you rightly say, you know, Harry does tend to fly off the handle at the smallest things. As we know, he was very unhappy, for example, about a photograph that didn't feature him being included in the Queen's broadcast one year. So to be actually legally removed as a councillor of state might be seen as poking the bear, should we say.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Rebecca. Let's hear again from our panel. And Robert, a couple of years ago, very few people knew about the councillors of state, and now it seems to be this thing that's causing almost panic at the palace.
Well, it's something that's always been there, and it's sort of become more of a thing, if you like, during this reign, because the Queen has travelled a lot when she's away. There needs to be a mechanism for maintaining affairs of state in her absence, and so councillors of state are appointed from, as Rebecca pointed out, this pool. It's usually been the spouse of the monarch plus the four first in line over the age of 21. It would, I think, be, it would definitely invite all sorts of debate and as Rebecca points out, doubtless upset the Duke of Sussex if he was somehow sort of debarred. And particularly, I think the public would find it very odd if he was suddenly removed as a Councillor of State, but the Duke of York wasn't. There's the sort of technicalities and the practicalities. I mean, you need Councillors of State to be here to conduct business. So if he's in LA, then he obviously can't do the job. I think the way round this, and what's happened over the years, as Rebecca says, the Queen can issue letters patent saying, I want this to happen. But the framework for that is still governed by Act of Parliament. So ultimately, this isn't a matter for the Queen. It's a matter for Boris Johnson and the government. And what I would suggest they do is, rather than sort of fiddle around deciding who can be a Councillor of State, just expand it. Just say, it could be the first, we could pick from the first 10 or whatever.
Well, that was going to be my next question: is who should it be?
Well, then you can say, well, we'll take A, B, and C. You might say, well, actually, Prince Charles is in the country; he could be one, and we'll take Princess Anne; she could be the other. Or if Prince Charles and the Duke of Cambridge are away, then you could say, well, we'll have the Princess Royal and we'll have the Earl of Wessex. It just removes the controversy. I think at this stage, to suddenly sort of strip the Duke of Sussex of something that he hasn't really done and doesn't really need, it's sort of, I think the phrase in the paper today was poking the bear, but I think, understandably he would feel hurt.
There's pussyfooting around Andrew's position, though, does seem to fly in the face of all the ruthlessness in other quarters.
I'm getting a bit wound up by this talk of, not poking the bear. Who cares? Look, this is ridiculous. What are we going to have?
Maybe everyone's just bored with the legal writs.
Someone who lives in LA potentially is legally could be called upon to carry out duties for the Queen. And with
so
Prince
are you
Andrew,
more upset about that than Prince Andrew?
Both of them. They should be stripped. I mean, it's very diplomatic of Robert's state could be extended, but no, they need to be stripped of it so that people can see that Prince Andrew would never be stepping in for the Queen. And I was very heartened by the fact that on the cover of this parliamentary document, research document, there were pictures of Princess Anne and Prince Edward. So I think they'd be very sensible replacements. But no, I think it does need to be addressed. And people say, oh, it doesn't matter, but I pay my car insurance every year and I don't expect to have a crash, but it needs to be done.
Do you think that there's any sense that people are just nervous about pushing the Queen on this? I mean, she's really had a lot of real trauma, I think, in the last couple of years.
I'm sure, no one would want to sort of, go in there and say, well, ma'am, I think we've got to sort this out. But if it's on the ministerial advice, then she just goes along with it. And I can see, I don't think it's beyond the wit of man for ministers to sort this out quite easily.
Do you think this is another thing that Prince Charles is maybe just waiting to sort out in a new monarchy?
You're right. As soon as he's king, there will be it will be all changed anyway, and that's when they would amend the Act or whatever. So I suspect officials, they're trying to avoid problems. They think, oh, can't we just kick it into the long grass? But to which I'd say, no, they can't. And I think the fact that Parliament had produced this paper, which Rebecca disclosed in the paper today, to me shows that it is being given some thought, and they're thinking about how to do it. So please do get on with it.
That's all we have time for on our YouTube version of the show today. But for more royal news, views and videos, you can head over to Mail Plus, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Bye-bye.